Jay Sekulow was at the court for the hearings, and Jay is the Chief Counsel of the American Center for Law and Justice. And Jay, what's your take? You heard
it was a great day for the state of Arizona. It was a great day for our side. We represent a large number of Congress, as well as a lot of the Arizona delegation, so it was a big case for us. But Pat, I think the two most telling things were, number one, all the discussion about the Arizona immigration laws focused on this concern over racial profiling or ethnic profiling. Yeah. The first question that the Chief Justice, John Roberts, asked Verrilli, that's the Solicitor General of the United States, was, this case has nothing to do with racial profiling or ethnic profiling, does it? He said, absolutely not. That's not an issue in this case. So that was a huge concession. In fact, that concession in and of itself set up for the next series of questions, which then came from Justice Sotomayor, which you would think would be someone that would not really be too keen on the Arizona law. She said to the Solicitor General, I'm confused by your answer. And then she went on to say, the fact is, she said, no one is buying this idea that the state of Arizona has no ability or capacity or right to enforce existing law. And the federal law and the state law mirror each other here. Yeah. So what happened was you had this sense that the government, the United States government, had one shot, and that was going to be, this is our jurisdiction, everybody else stays out of the way. And all of the justices seem to reject that out of hand. Now, when they get back and they vote, you never know exactly how it's going to happen. But the good news is the oral argument went very well, and Paul Clement, again, did an incredibly great job. He's had a busy 2 months.
Verrilli's got egg all over his face.
He's a good lawyer.
Is he?
Who, and I'll tell you what it is, as someone that does a lot at the Supreme Court, I always have, and you've been up there when I've done them, I always have an escape hatch. You always have a way out of a case. And if you got objections from justices, you give them another approach. They are ideologues. And because they're ideologues, they're not thinking through. So they have their position, and that's it. Remember the president made the statement, Pat, and it made some news back when he made it. I don't want some kid picked up in an ice cream store because of their race, because of the immigration law of Arizona. And that's what's going to happen. Again, racial profiling. But then the first words out of the Solicitor General's mouth are, this has nothing to do with racial or ethnic profiling. It's a question of, can the states actually engage this issue? And there was a great question asked by Justice Alito, where he said, if there were, and which has been a problem, if there was civil unrest in Arizona because of the border drug wars and these kind of things that are happening, are you telling me the state of Arizona cannot enforce the existing laws in order to stop that kind of unrest? And they were dumbfounded. The government didn't want to answer that question. Also, the government conceded they didn't have the resources for enforcement, that some of the illegal immigration is not a priority for enforcement purposes.
They said all that in
all of that. So it was, that's why you saw all the major media saying this was a big day for Arizona, big day for Governor Jan Brewer.
Well, as I understand, the Arizona law mirrored the federal law, and they said basically we're going to enforce the federal laws.
Enforcing the federal law that the federal government acknowledged yesterday at the Supreme Court, they don't have the resources to enforce. So that became the entire case, which ends up being not really a big issue. If that's all that's at stake, I think, you never know until you get the decision, but I'm really optimistic. But this is a trend with this administration. The Solicitor General's taking these positions and are forcing themselves into this box. Now, again, you never know how the justices will actually vote, but based on the question yesterday, when Justice Sotomayor, it was a big headline on a lot of papers, I'm confused by your, now you have me really confused. It tells you that was not getting the answer she wanted. Justice Kagan recused herself from that case, so she wasn't there. But it was quite the hour and 20 minutes. Case went longer than anticipated.
Well, is Kennedy again? Is he a swing vote, or you think there'll be a majority?
I'm not so sure. I think Justice Kennedy clearly had trouble with the government's argument, the federal government's argument. But I'm not so sure he's the swing here, because I'm not so sure it's that close. Okay. Now, like I said, you never know. But based on he didn't ask a lot of questions yesterday. He asked a few. His questions were very pointed, and again, focusing on the enforcement. Everybody acknowledged that this is not a new law being created, that this is simply a systematic enforcement mechanism. That's what was at play here. And the end result of that is that should be a non-issue.
Well, basically, the law of the preemption is if the feds have a law and they're enforcing the law, the state can't put a law that contravenes that.
Of course.
That's the ruling.
Right, except this law was exactly mirrors the federal law with enforcement provisions on the state level. And then they made this argument, by the way, that the state law enforcement personnel were not properly trained. Well, that was absolutely defeated as an argument, because they get tremendous amount of training. And you know that in the law, in the federal law, there's actually a statement where state law enforcement officials can call ICE, that's the Immigration Bureau, and check on status of someone. And all the law did in South Carolina, Alabama, you've got Georgia now, and of course Arizona. There's 5 states have these laws. All they're doing is saying instead of you can, you shall. They want them to call. They want the call to be made. But what it is, the federal government really doesn't want to remove the illegal immigrants here. And I'm the grandson of illegal immigrants in the United States. I like immigration when it's done correctly. But that's what this is really about. This is the ideological and political clash. We're just seeing it played out at the Supreme Court of the United States like we've never seen before.
Well, it's going to hurt them. I mean, this coming into the election is going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something, Pat. I think I think the Republicans are going to come with a very thorough immigration policy that's going to make sense. Mm-hmm. The administration is suing states. I mean, what people need to understand is federal dollars, our taxpayer dollars, were used to have the Department of Justice sue the state of Arizona while the Department of Justice was overseeing a gun running scheme into Mexico.
Yeah.
But they sue Arizona. Tells you where the priorities are.
Jay, thank you.
We'll know at the end of
June.
June.
Well, end of June, both of those decisions
I think so.
will be coming down. All right.